Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Shree's Sunday New York Times Read-Along. We have a great show planned for you today. Our guest is Micheline Maynard, Micki Maynard, former Detroit bureau chief of the New York Times. We'll be talking about her career in journalism, some of the work that she's been doing lately with a podcast and with food industry writing. And of course, our host is Sri Srinivasan. Please let us know where you're watching from. Please remember to hit share or retweet. And we are live, of course, on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. For everyone watching on replay, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate people taking the time to watch afterwards. And this week in particular, I want to give a shout out. Micki was kind enough to let us stream directly to her Facebook page. So all of Micki's friends who are joining, thank you. And we also have our streaming to the New York Times alumni group, the women, current women and former women at the New York Times. And our friend Carla Baranuackas, former copy editor of the New York Times, is in that group to shepherd you and let you know what we're doing. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to hit share. And without further ado, I'm going to go to our New York City cam to see what the skyline looks like. That is a view outside of Shree's balcony, looking south, I believe, into Midtown. And as he pans to the right, we see just a little bit of the Hudson River and New Jersey. Everything is legal in New Jersey, right, Shree?
Yes, it is. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please hit share right now. Please tag your friends. Please tell us where you're watching from. We are delighted to host this. It's been 5 years of hosting the New York Times Read Along, and we are blessed to have a global community that joins us every Sunday live or later. So please tag and share. Let me say hello to everybody also. Hi, everyone. I'm Sri Srinivasan, Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism. Many of you who know journalism know the name Marshall Loeb because he's the legendary editor, former editor of Fortune and Money Magazine, and a great supporter and mentor of mine and thousands of other journalists. So I'm honored to have that position at Stony Brook. I see Carla is watching. Hi, Carla, former national copy chief of the New York Times. Who else is here with us? Please tag your friends.
And so one of the things, Shree, that we're going to be doing today, which is a little bit special, as we get back inside, you'll have a second device to be able to check Facebook comments, and I can check them as well on my phone. One of the challenges, in this time of COVID-19, you've seen bandwidth issues. We've seen major platforms struggle with the increased load that we have. One of the things that we're experiencing today, for the first time ever, we've had, I don't know how many shows since December, and Shree has done the Shree COVID call. I think he's up to 52 now. We are not getting the comments directly from Facebook profiles into StreamYard. So we're going to do as much of a job as we can to read comments on the air, and I'm going to do that right now. We're going to be checking our phones. We have, let's see, who else? I
see Jody's watching from sunny Fort Lauderdale. Rochelle is watching from Hastings-on-Hudson. I know, right. Friend of yours. Mark is watching from Durham, North Carolina.
And I want to give a shout out, Shree, sorry, Diane Hughes from St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. So that's, I don't think we've seen Diane join us before. We do have someone watching on Twitter as well. DBT Coach says hi from New York City. So who else? Manuel Llaneras, right, Shree?
He's watching from Spain. That's wonderful. Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar is watching. She's somewhere over there in New Jersey. She is a dear friend of the show, and she has been our medical guest in the past, and we are going to have a medical guest again today. So stay tuned. After we're done with the New York Times read along at around 10 o'clock, we will continue with our special guest, a physician who's going to be joining us.
Shri, from Twitter, we have Trish Connors joining us. If you remember, she's in Hillsborough, New Jersey. She's saying the sun is trying to come out. Trish, we first got to know Trish when you did your epic tour of the New York Times printing plant with Mike Connors. That was such an incredible experience, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And hi, Trish. You can say hi to Mike for us, please. And you're looking down at an empty New York City. And it's Sunday, 9 a.m., so you don't expect a lot of traffic. But this is what roughly it looks like during the day, even on weekdays. There are cars because we are right off the highway here, goes on to the Henry Hudson Parkway. So there are always cars, but you see very few people. And it's kind of stunning to see that. That's the 96th Street subway stop that we're looking at over there. All right, let's keep looking at who else is checking in. Pradnya, our friend, is watching from Silver Spring. Laura Silverman, former guest, is watching from Philadelphia's lovely Mount Airy neighborhood. And Jen Singer's checking in from the Jersey Shore. Linda's watching from Long Island. Susanna's watching from Mexico. Folks, please tag your friends. And Ari Goldman, wow, Professor Ari Goldman, who did a read-along with me at the New York Times headquarters. All the way down there, you can actually see a little bit of the headquarters down there. He is with us. And by the way, Neil, this was a live read-along we did on a Monday morning with his students at the New York Times Academy. And
you had a special guest join you, I think, right?
Yeah, Arthur Sulzberger Jr., the publisher of the New York Times, and then walked by, and so we roped him into the conversation as well. So this is, you never know what's going to happen on a New York Times read-along. And just delighted to have everybody here. Let's get going. We are so grateful to everyone for being here, for tagging your friends, for sharing. We really, really appreciate it. Mary Jane from Manhasset, Doug Levy from Northern California, where it is 5:30 in the morning. Thank you. And Terry is watching from Las Vegas, where it's also 5:30 in the morning. So thank you all for being here. Just want to acknowledge that for the last 52 days, we've been doing the daily COVID-19 show, and I've been learning so much and meeting so many new people. Thank you all for your support of that show. We're looking for guests, we're looking for themes, and we're looking for sponsors. And speaking of sponsors,
Shri, we have some great sponsors here at the New York Times Read Along, and we want to acknowledge them real quick and put them on the screen. But we also want to let people know how you can sponsor the show. So let's go to that. We have two great sponsors, Strategy Focus Group and Muckrack. Thank you for your support of the New York Times Read Along. A quick word, Strategy Focus Group is a global team of human capital strategists committed to helping organizations solve people issues within your organization. They do that by working alongside you to solve your toughest problems and helping you capture your greatest opportunities. Muckrack helps you discover news as it breaks, easily generate reports, and explore the work of journalists, podcasters, bloggers, and more. Muckrack software helps PR teams build stronger relationships with the media. And if you're a journalist, you might also be eligible for their free tools to identify trends and showcase your work. Thank you, Muckrack and Strategy Focus Group, for your support of the New York Times Read Along. If you're interested in being a sponsor, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email me at neil@neilparekh.org. And you can also email Shri at shri@shri.net. One of the things that we want to encourage people to do is to support our sponsors, learn more about the great work they're doing by clicking on their links. You can click on readalong.link/strategy focused group and readalong.link/muckrack to learn more about them. Thank you, Shri.
Thank you to our sponsors. We're so grateful to them. It helps us show you the kind of production values we have here and also to pay producers to make these shows possible. So thank you so much for anyone who has already sponsored us or can sponsor us in the days and months ahead.
Great. So should we get going with today's show? Do we want to start off, Shri, by talking about our special opportunity? Well, first, we bring in our producers so we can explain to people what we do. So I'm going to bring in Paula Kiger and Julia Weeks.
Good morning.
Good morning. And one of the things that we want to explain to people is that we couldn't do this show without a team of people to make it successful. What we have, Paula Kiger is in the Facebook page, Shri's Facebook page, dropping in links and engaging with the audience. Julia is watching and helping people in our LinkedIn post on Shri's LinkedIn page. And this week, although she's not on screen, our friend Carla Baranuackas is actually in the New York Times alumni group to engage with people there. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to them if you have any issues with the tech. But they'll also be adding context and background information as we go. So for example, the sponsor links, I read them out on air. They'll copy and paste those links into the comments, so it's easier for you to follow later. Paula, Julia, thank you so much for the great work you do every week to make this show a success. Please feel free to follow them and on social media. Our full sponsorship team is myself, Paula Kiger at Big Creek Pen, Steve Taylor, who's not working with us this week, at Steve DeReeve, and Julia Weeks, Julia L. Weeks, across all channels. I'm of course at Neil Parekh. And as I mentioned this week, joining us as a producer is Carla Baranuackas, and you can find her follow her on Twitter at CA Bara. Again, Carla Baranuackas, thank you for all the work. And in fact, when we talk about our guests, Carla is the one that introduced us to Micheline. So thank you for that as well. Paula,
and by the way,
Julia?
not just former copy chief, she called copy editor, called national copy chief of the New York.
National copy editor.
Copy chief of the New York Times.
Copy chief. My apologies. So thank you, Carla, and thank you, Paula and Julia, and we'll get back to the show.
Thank you, folks, and thank you. We're just giving you a taste of the print edition that we're going to be talking about in just a minute, but this is so exciting to see this. And since we have so many new people watching us today, Neil, I think it's important for us to talk about why we do this. I started the New York Times Read Along as a way for me to just share the New York Times. I love print and have loved it since I got my first byline in a newspaper in the Fiji Sun at the age of 16. And I knew this is what I wanted to do the rest of my life. I don't think my parents were excited, but they saw the love it generated. But it started even earlier when my father started getting the New York Times when I was 9 years old in New York. And we just landed here from India, and we came here, and I still remember the first time the Sunday New York Times arrived, and I'd never seen such a thick newspaper. In India, we have lots and lots of English newspapers, but none of them were as thick as the New York Times. And I went on to have the honor of working there one summer and at the New York Times under Kevin McKenna on the New York Times Today project in 1997. And I also had the honor of writing more than 50 stories for the New York Times over my career. And Neil, you have a very unusual connection to newspapers because of your father being a journalist and publisher of News India Times. But he had a special request when he passed away.
He did. My father passed away. I was trying to remember now. 2009. So just about 11 years ago now. And when he passed, one of his last requests were to be buried with a print edition of the Sunday Times. And not buried, he was cremated, but we put a Sunday edition in the casket with him. And that was, we grew up reading the Times. It was part of our routine every day. That blue bag is still etched in my memory. I'm here in Washington, D.C. now, and unfortunately we get the Times in a clear Washington Post bag because they work with local delivery folks. But let's take a look at some of the comments coming in, Shri. I'm going to make that big on the screen, and I'll leave you to the show. I'll take myself off.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Here are some of the comments. People watching. Diane's watching from St. Croix, and we have just friends from all over the world. Marilyn's watching from Staten Island, and she's been doing amazing work in this time of crisis. And we're so grateful. Ashok is watching in Trivandrum, in Kerala, where my parents live, and just so honored and grateful. By the way, look how meta this is. We're scrolling here, and you're seeing that there as well. And you can see the delay in this, so that's kind of amazing. Let's see. Pradnya says, that's amazing, Neil, talking about your father. Our friend Tim Sohn is watching with us. Alexis Gelber is watching, terrific journalist and friend of ours. Ayan is watching. Ayan is the son of the great Indian Sarod maestro Amjad Ali Khan. And Jodi Rory is watching. She is a professor of Latinx and Latin American studies at John Jay College, and she was my guest on my other show, WBAI FM 99.5 FM in New York. I am honored to be able to have a call-in show. It's called Coping with COVID, a helpful, hopeful call-in show. And I get to talk to terrific folks, and she was a guest speaker just yesterday. So Saturdays, noon to 2 in New York, but you can listen around the world as well. Laura says, how did I not know about Neil's father being a journalist and publisher? He was also a lawyer. And Mark says, got you beat, Sri. I wrote a mimeogram newspaper when I was 10 or 11, complete with my own weather forecast and I believe editorials. That's awesome. Look at all these comments coming in. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And Mirza says, hello from Silver Spring. My mom is Pradnya. That's awesome. Hi, Mirza. Well, and welcome. And thank you, everybody, for being here. All right, let's get started. We're going to bring Micki on and have her just say hi to us, and we will interview her as we go from here. Look at this. Egyptenia is watching from Egypt. How cool is that? And whenever Micki is ready, we'll have her come on screen with us. Here's the Sunday front page of the New York Times, and you're seeing here for the first time in a very long time, the New York subway system is closed from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. That would be not news in any other country, but the New York subway system never closes. And apart from certain emergencies like around 9/11 and around the Superstorm Sandy. And so now it's closed in part to do cleaning, and because the homeless, many homeless folks are now using the subway as a last refuge. And so that's why it's being closed, and that's what's happening there. Let's see on the front page, also the lead story, profits and pride at stake, race to vaccine intensifies, government, academic, and business labs vie in rush that may imperil safety. So a big story here, and something that we really need to be thinking about and talking about. And we are ready to have Micki join us. We'd love to have her be here. There she is. Hi, Micki.
Good morning from Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor, how nice. For those who haven't been, tell them why they should know how great Ann Arbor is.
I live here. So Ann Arbor is known for two things. Obviously, the University of Michigan, go blue. And you might have also heard of Zingerman's Deli, which is the famous food community out here that started almost 40 years ago and will be the topic of my next book. So those two things. And then also we're a town of about 116,000. We're 45 miles west of Detroit. We have great medical centers here, but it's a very livable place. And it actually, when I was at the Times, I was told we had a higher per capita readership in Ann Arbor than any other place except the Upper West Side. So there are a lot of loyal New York Times readers, and we appreciate every single one.
We certainly do, and so glad to have you here, Micki. We are in touch in multiple groups and over multiple years. Yes. And just so nice to see you. Let's remind folks that you were the Detroit bureau chief of the New York Times. You had a storied career there. You're now an educator, and you write, and you've got another book coming out. So lots lots of things that you're working on, and we want to hear all about that. But I want to give you a chance to do a shout out to your friends and family and everyone watching.
Sure. So I just wanted to say hi to all my Facebook friends, my friends on LinkedIn, everybody on Twitter. Hi, Twitter people. My family is obviously, like a lot of families right now, scattered. My nephew, Benjamin Maynard, is a chief resident at a hospital north of Detroit. Thankfully, he's been doing a little bit more paperwork lately than ER duty, but we think of him. My other nephew is an environmentalist who was just about to start a job when all of this happened. So hopefully when shutdown is over, maybe very soon, he'll be, outside. My brother is a longtime broadcast engineer who was recently honored as the leading broadcast engineer in the state of Michigan. So we're very proud of Frank Maynard. And my sister-in-law, Lisa Barry Maynard, is the All Things Considered host at WEMU-FM, which is the public radio station at Eastern Michigan University, which could definitely use your help right now. Their coverage of COVID-19 in Washtenaw County here has just been splendid. So hi, friends and family.
Oh, thank you, Micki. And we're just so glad that you're doing well. This is one of the things I say to everyone I connect with on our shows, just happy to see you. And I really mean that.
Right. Well, I always get a flu shot. So I have to just give a shout out right now to always get your flu shot and get it as early in the fall as possible. I haven't been sick at all. My 92-year-old aunt, Maxine Clapper, lives with me. She has not left the house since all of this happened, but she seems to be getting through it just fine. But I wear a mask. I wash my hands. I try to be as safe as possible, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same.
That's great advice. And don't touch your face, right? Like that's.
Don't touch your face.
Yeah, exactly. Let's start with something that was very serious in the subject of my newsletter, which I hope everybody got in their inbox. If you didn't get my weekly newsletter, please drop me a note, sri@sri.net, and we'll add you once a week. We look at different topics, and we also give you things to read and watch from around the world, produced by my friend Zach Peterson out in Prague. And what we wrote about today, Micki, was something to do with your part of the country and what happened in Michigan this past week, where we had armed terrorists with assault rifles charging the state capitol, saying they want to have the right to be removed from lockdown and have the right to be infected, I guess. I'm not sure exactly. And one of the things I've been saying, Micki, is that imagine if any one of those were people of color and carrying guns and allowed to go out, what would have happened? Tamir Rice lost his life as a 12-year-old boy carrying a toy gun. And here were these people in full camouflage and masks. That was the only thing they were doing right, was wearing the masks, but carrying their guns and threatening the government.
Right. Well, it was very distressing as someone who was born in Michigan and was a homeowner here, taxpayer here. We were distressed because I would say probably 90% of people in the state of Michigan are following the governor's advice. We suspect that this is part of an organized group of these demonstrations that are taking place around the country. And if you look at last week's chronology, they started in Columbus. The demonstration started in Columbus, came here, went to Chicago, went to Minneapolis. And the suspicion here is that while some of those people may indeed be from Michigan and may in fact oppose the governor, which is their right to do, the people who were armed and the people with the signs were probably from an organized group. So it's awful, and it sends exactly the wrong message about what things are like in Michigan. The thing that people don't know that I learned this week is that it is legal to carry a firearm into the state capitol. It is not legal to take a placard into the state capitol. So guns, yes, signs, no. And the reason for the sign is that the state capitol has a number of balconies, and if you drop your sign from, say, the third floor balcony down onto the floor, you could hurt someone. So it was a terrible image for the state of Michigan, and it was upsetting to a lot of us who live here.
No, thank you, and thank you for explaining how that all came together. And we have obviously in this country a great divide over what is happening. You would think that this would be the one opportunity not to be political, but we've become even more political and more divided as a result of this COVID-19 crisis. And I will just ask you to say something about your governor so that people understand the context with why this was happening, why President Trump calls her that woman, and all of that.
So Michigan actually, people think of us as a blue state. We go back and forth. I mean, if you look at who's been governor for the last 30 years or so, we've had Democratic governors and we've had Republican governors, and the governor's chair does seem to go back and forth. We have a Republican legislature and have had one for several years now, but we elected Gretchen Whitmer last fall as governor, and she was the Democratic leader in the state Senate. So Governor Whitmer is one of the toughest politicians I've ever seen in my lifetime in Michigan. And I find her, I would say, it was fascinating to watch just because she just doesn't take anything from anybody. She ran on a platform, let's see, would have been 2018 now, of her slogan was "Fix the damn roads." And actually our roads are terrible and people would like her to fix the roads. But unfortunately, our state has been hit extremely hard by COVID-19. Now, we were not one of the first states to put a stay-home order in place. Ohio was ahead of us by a couple of days, and it's been fascinating because Governor Mike DeWine in Ohio, who's a Republican, is someone we all know for years and years and years. He was a member of the House, and he took much bolder action than Governor Gretchen Whitmer. But what has complicated things, I think, is that Joe Biden, the presumed Democratic nominee, said he was going to pick a woman as a running mate. And because she's so nationally prominent now, immediately the spotlight shone on Governor Whitmer. And so I think that is one of the reasons why President Trump has zeroed in on her. I think if Joe Biden hadn't said that, frankly, that we would maybe get criticism from the president, but not to the extent that she has been getting.
Thank you. Actually, I had not thought of that aspect of it. And so here we have the president's natural tendencies of misogyny and everything else kind of bundling into this situation. All right, let's look at, before we look at this paper here, tell me what you think as you look at this kind of array of newspapers around us right now.
Well, I get two Sunday papers. I get the New York Times and I also get the Ann Arbor News, which we still have a local paper, although we only have it 2 days a week. It was 7 days a week when I was growing up. The fascinating thing to me about what the Times is doing is that it's evolving in the face of the needs of the news. I mean, if you look in today's paper, you obviously have a front page and a front section that's very much dominated by COVID-19. And then you have inside sections. It's kind of interesting because I was a business reporter. So my first instinct is to look for Sunday business. And as far as I can tell, we didn't get a Sunday business section. So I don't have that section 3. In the national edition, at least I can't find it in my paper. It might be tucked inside another section, but we don't have a visible Sunday business section in the national edition. And I think that reflects a couple of things. I think the national edition gets printed pretty early. I mean, I think the deadline was 4 p.m. on Saturday. When I worked there, it might be later now, but we're getting the front section. We get the new at-home section. We get styles. We get arts and leisure, we get the review, and there's plenty to read, and the magazine, of course, and the book review. There's plenty to read, but it's not the old New York Times. And I haven't had any conversations with Times readers locally just because I haven't been able to talk to them. But I have a feeling that there are some people wondering, what's happened to my paper. And I think the Times has done a great job of explaining why it's making the changes.
Shri, this is Neil. I'm just going to step in for a quick minute. I wanted to share a comment that we got, Micki, on your page, just related to Michigan. Andy Carwin is watching.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Andy.
And
I'm just looking
he
for the
meant,
business section in case I missed it. So.
okay. And Andy was saying that protests have definitely been organized courtesy
There
of
it
the
is.
Door Brothers.
Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that there was no Sunday business. It was tucked inside something else. Sorry.
Sometimes that happens when they sort the papers. But he was just saying, he was commenting, and he shared a link to an NBC News report on that. We also have viewers watching on LinkedIn from a number of places, from California, from Hilton Head, South Carolina, the Upper West Side, Edgewater, right across the river, and Tampa, Florida. So we wanted to give a shout out to everyone watching on LinkedIn. We're able to get Julia Weeks is watching there and sharing any comments that people have with us. As a reminder, we're reading the comments that we see on Facebook. Shri has some teed up right now. We'll just take a look at what we have.
Terry Ann. Hello.
So Terry Ann and Mark Lee. Do you want to read some of those, Shri?
Sure. Terry says, Micki studied business at Columbia as a Badgett Fellow before Sri worked at Columbia Journalism School.
And I met Sri. Yeah, I met you at Columbia because I came to give a talk about one of my books, and you were kind enough to stop by. So.
Of course. And Terry ran the Night Badgett program, one of the incredible programs at Columbia. And it's just great that all these folks are watching. My father's watching in Kerala in India. Have you been to India?
I have not, and it's on my list. And I'm a huge Bollywood fan. So I want to just say that this was a difficult week for everybody who enjoys the Indian movie industry. And I'm still a little choked up about losing Ifan. So I send my love to everyone who also enjoys the movies as much as I do.
There was also, we also lost Rishi Kapoor this week, which was a double hit. We actually, my mom shared, we were in India in 1984, number of years ago, and we were able to visit the Kapoor family. We knew them from some of their work in New York, and they actually sang. My sister, this is a nice little anecdote. My sister, my mom's watching, so a big shout out to my mom.
Hi, Mom.
She's a very loyal watcher from Hastings on Hudson. My sister whispered to them that it was my mom's birthday. So we had them singing happy birthday to my mom. And I still remember that Rishi Kapoor, and this actually reminded me after the news, that day he had a really bad back problem. He couldn't get off the sofa. He was, laying down, and I was, teasing him, but I think under my breath and afterward calling him backache boy. So it's just the connections that you see with people, and between Irfan Khan and Rishi. It was just a tough week, certainly.
Well, and I wanted to just shout out to our South Asia community here in Washtenaw County, because we actually have about 15% of the people who live here are from South Asia. My neighbors across the fence are from South Asia, and grow a beautiful garden. And of course, we're all frustrated that we can't get outside more. But we also have a branch of Patel brothers here, and my friend Louisa Chu, who is a food writer for the Chicago Tribune, did a whole podcast episode on Patel, and I was delighted to know that we have a branch of it here. So
great! Wow, I had no idea. 15% of the population. That's incredible.
Of Washtenaw County,
probably with the university, right?
With the university, yeah. So our neighbor is a retired professor. His son is actually out in Hollywood. He's an engineer out there. And they are, keep me up on a lot of things. So hello. I don't know if they're watching, but I am very interested in India and, all things Indian cooking. And certainly I'm watching what's happening with COVID in India as well.
And as you can see,
thank you so much, Micki. I see Ron Thomas is here. Ron's our sponsor from Strategy Focus Group, watching from Dubai. The only, one of the sad things to note is that Ron is usually watching from a different country every Sunday, no matter what time it is, anywhere in the world. He's a sponsor of ours and a supporter, former guest on the show, and just an example of this global community we've built. Lakshmi is watching from Mangalore in India. And look at this, Paula has put in the obits of both Irfan and of Rishi in the New York Times. That tells you something. that they were both in the New York Times. And we did for my daily COVID-19 show on Friday for my 50th episode in the morning, 7 a.m. So you can go back into my YouTube channel, StreamYard, and see the archives. We did an incredible conversation with our friend Asim Chabra, who's the author of a book about Shashi Kapoor, Rishi's uncle.
Oh.
And we did a whole conversation with him about Irfan Khan, because he has a new book on Irfan Khan also. So he's got, so please check that out and follow Chabs, CHHABS, on Twitter. And I will also just give everybody a 20-second version of my Bollywood story. My father was an Indian diplomat in Moscow, and we had every Indian actor of the 70s show up at our home for dinner, including Raj Kapoor and Shashi Kapoor. And it was like an incredible thing to think about. And to tie this all together, I'm going to show you a photo taken in November at my house, the apartment I'm in right now. There's my wife, Rupa, and we're there. And right in the middle is the actress, the wonderful actress, Manisha Koirala, who was in so many big movies, including Dil Se, and some of you know 1942, A Love Story. And she was also a guest on my regular daily show about talking about COVID-19. So you can find that in my YouTube archive. Please subscribe to YouTube/StreamYard, SREENET. Andy Carvin is watching, the great Andy Carvin. Thank you, Andy, for being here. And Andy says R.I.P. Irfan. Yeah. And Tanya says, when was your dad in Moscow? Tanya, my father and I, and my mother, we were posted in Moscow in the early 70s. So we were there from 73-ish to 75-ish, some 77, something like that. And Tanya is a wonderful photographer who, among other things, did official portraits of Malala Yousafzai, the Nobel laureate. So that's how, what a community we have here. And Andy, we'd love to read the New York Times with you or have you on our daily COVID show as well. So thank you all for being here. Let's continue our conversation with Micki Maynard. We should tell everybody that we do this every Sunday, 8:30 to 10 a.m. And we've been doing it for 5 years now. We have no connection to the New York Times apart from being fans. Many people have said the New York Times should sponsor this, the New York Times should do this and that, but we've not done that because it gives us the independence to critique and praise as we wish. But we're very grateful for the individual journalists at the New York Times who've appeared here, including Kevin McKenna, who you know very well, Micki, yes, as well as going to the homes of Amy Vershap, the travel editor of the New York Times, as well as the home of Tom Jolly, the print editor of the New York Times. And we also went to the printing plant and did a live New York Times read-along from there at 9:30 at night one day. But we're live every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. So let's continue. Let me see if anything grabs your attention here.
Oh, well, I definitely want to talk about the subway story.
Yeah, please.
So the Curbing Cars newsletter, which started back up again at the beginning of the year. I write weekly stories. I have guest writers, and this week's newsletters, which comes out this afternoon at 4 o'clock, and you can sign up at curbingcars.com, or you can sign up right on Substack, because we publish on Substack.
Can you spell that, please? 1 second. Can you spell that, please?
Oh, so Curbing Cars, CURBINGCARS, Curbing Cars we're at Curbing Cars on Twitter. Our website is curbingcars.com, or you can go just straight to Substack and do a search for the Curbing Cars newsletter on Substack. And we publish every week. It comes out Sunday at 4, and then if you become a paid subscriber, you'll get extra bonuses. There's a midweek report that comes out, and we have extra features that just go to our paid subscribers. But the free newsletter is every Sunday afternoon. And so this week, we're looking at the fact that the city that never sleeps is going to have a subway that sleeps. And as a former New Yorker, I lived in Park Slope before it was as chic as it is now. I took the 405 and the 12. I took the F train. When I was up at Columbia, I lived at Butler Hall. So I was at 122 and Amsterdam, I guess, and I use the bus a lot. Love the bus. I'm an architecture fan and love looking out the window at buildings. But I mean, the subway, I can't imagine New York without a 24-hour subway. But as I learned when I was doing my reporting for this article, the 24-hour subway in New York is an anomaly. Most global cities do not have a 24-hour subway. They shut it down from about midnight to 5 in the morning for cleaning, for maintenance, just because you have to pay people extra to work overnight. And what was interesting to find out was I think there's about 11,000 people who use the New York subway during those overnight hours. And so those people will have to be accommodated. But then there's the secondary issue of homeless people who sleep in the stations. And from what I understand, I have to admit I've been paying more attention to COVID than to the mayor and his fight over the homeless. But from what I understand, he's been wanting to boot the homeless from subway stations for some time. And a lot of people see this effort as the way to get people, out of the stations and into shelters or into alternative housing. So we look at that story ourselves in the newsletter that'll come out this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And there's something interesting, many dimensions to this, but the fact that you're running this in Michigan and you're, home of the American auto industry tells you how much of an impact this story is, how important this is. By the way, we're looking at your Twitter feed. Everyone, please follow Micki on Twitter. She is terrific. She's Micki Maynard on Twitter. So please do follow her. And she tweeted out that she's live right now. And here is Steve, who is watching in reading you in Belfast.
Yeah.
And he says, does Sri still have his museum of outdated tech, comms tech? Yes, I do, where we have really old technology. This was not planned, but I will see if I can show you. Yes, I can, right here, unprompted or prompted, but unplanned. Here is one of my old technologies, this phone that I still have with me. This is an old Samsung phone. This was cutting edge, state of the art in 2003 or 4. And look how tiny it is. And we still see people who have phones like this in some places. But this is, you ask Steve, and here we are showing you the outdated phones. But I have all kinds of great gadgets, all inspired by seeing Walt Mossberg, who you know, Micki, great Wall Street Journal journalist and columnist and the dean of the tech reporting family. And he was one of the folks who had a museum in his office. And so I stole that idea from him, like I stole a lot of things from him. All right, let's keep going. The last so with matriarch ill, a family prepares for the end. Love and care stretch across 2,500 miles. So sad. They say that dying alone is one of the greatest fears that people have. And now so many people we know are dying every day, and they're dying alone without even their families able to come in. Their last conversation is through FaceTime or something like that. It's hard to imagine that that's the case. Clara Martinez Turco is watching from Turin, and Micki, at the early days of this crisis, we had her on to talk about what's happening in Torino. And at that point, she said that Italians fear dying alone more than anything else, and Italians were dying alone, but we never expected America to take over and be even in worse position than any other country, or New York City to be worse than any other country except America in this situation. Let's see the story. No more Jenga and no amen as Asia adapts. I'm not sure what the Jenga reference is here. And they got aid. They're afraid of spending it. And so this is the business angles on this are really interesting. Anybody who has read this story, please explain what no more Jenga or no more amen as Asia adapts. The allegation is against Biden, but the burden falls on women. Now, I've not read the story yet, but I think it's important to see where this is in the New York Times on the front page. There has been, as people who've been following the news know, that there have been conversations around last year starting about how his interactions with women, just in terms of how he interacts with them. He's a very friendly, huggy kind of guy, and so there were lots of stories and a lot of attention paid to that. But this is one of those women. Tara Reid now says that she was assaulted by him, and he addressed this on an interview on Morning Joe this week. And now the New York Times is here. Jack Schafer, who's a Politico editor and columnist, says the accusations by the right that no one's covering the Biden accusation, which he has denied, of course, is wrong, because it's been covered. And look, it's covered here as well on the front page of the New York Times. So let me pause there, see if you have any comments, if you want to say anything about this. We also want to acknowledge, and every time we talk about about the single allegation against Joe Biden, that the president has had dozens of credible accusations by women of sexual assault. There is him on tape talking about grabbing women by the genitals, and he is still president and has not had to answer for his role in the way he treats women, as we see that unfold right in front of our eyes.
Right. So I want to just offer a couple thoughts on this story. First of all, I think it's really important, and I said this on Twitter this week, I think Joe Biden should sit down and has sat down with Morning Joe this past week to talk about these allegations. And I believe that Tara Reid should definitely air her, whatever her allegations are. I think it would be great if somebody like 60 Minutes or Frontline sat down with her, sat down with any documents that there are, and goes through the allegations. Absolutely. But let me offer a couple of thoughts on it. First of all, our friends over in Minnesota, which is Carla's home, are still upset over Al Franken, over losing Al Franken as a senator. And if people don't remember, there were photographs showing Al Franken groping a member of his acting, I think it was a USO troop, while she was sleeping. And if you want to get caught up on that, Terry Gross did a lot on this on Fresh Air, and there's some really compelling discussion back and forth all about that. But Al Franken allegations came up, and within a couple of days he had resigned from the Senate. And there's so many people in Minnesota and around the Midwest that really regret him hastily making that decision, because there had not been hearings, there had not really been an opportunity to discuss the allegations. And Minnesota lost Al Franken, and Al Franken could have been a voice in Me Too and in all of this. So I think people look at the allegations against Biden and they're worried that he'll be pushed out of getting the nomination, although I don't think that's going to happen. But, it happened to Al Franken. He lost his Senate seat. So, if the drumbeat gets loud enough, people can say, well, Al Franken had to go, Joe Biden's got to go. They'll look at it that way. The other thing was, there was a comment from Nancy Pelosi this week, and the speaker said something along the lines of Joe Biden is Joe Biden. And I think what she meant was just what you were saying, Sri, that he is a very affectionate person, and he's one of those shoulder squeezers, and he is, the kind of gentleman or man that a lot of us women have encountered over the years in business and in politics, where they, put their arm around you. You haven't invited them to put their arm around you, but they're powerful. So you just we had a CEO of Ford Motor Company who, in the middle of a question in a scrum, would lean over and kiss you. And I thought it was inappropriate, but he's the CEO of Ford Motor Company. What are you going to do? So when Nancy Pelosi said that, I thought about all those instances that I had encountered over the years where somebody had, gotten a little bit too close, but you just smile and put up with it because they're somebody you need for a story or something like that. Well, I don't think young women put up with it the way my generation, Gen Xers and boomers might have put up with it. I think they're more likely to say, get the heck away from me. And so when she said that, I thought it definitely reflected her generational look at the Joe Biden situation. And as someone a few decades younger than Nancy Pelosi, and then the women younger than me, I think we don't really want to look at it and excuse it as easily as maybe older women did. And I don't want to turn this into a totally generational discussion, but I do think that, the Democrats have decided this is our nominee and we're going to line up behind him and we have to protect him. And I think there still does have to be a discussion. And I am glad to see that that story's on the front page of the Times.
Thank you, Micki. Very important analysis from you. By the way, this day in the history, 1978, the New York Times wrote about something called tofu for the first time. And they say here, for those with a curiosity for food, particularly new foods, tofu experimentation is definitely in order. It's exceptionally good for those who are allergic to dairy products or who shun them for health reasons. The Times wrote in a report that profiled companies mass-producing tofu to meet growing demand in America. A spokeswoman for one producer credited the American Natural Organic People, a term with which a Times writer noted, she takes a deep breath and says it as one long word. American Natural Organic People. That's so funny. So this is how America changes, right? Yeah. New things come in. Today, you don't need to explain what tofu is. In the New York Times, we used to write, the New York Times would say something like, the World Wide Web, comma, a graphical portion of the internet, comma, was how they would write in the New York Times. And so here is, what rights do pregnant workers have in a pandemic? Very interesting story. We learned from your colleague, Stuart Elliott, the great Stuart Elliott, advertising columnist for many years in the New York Times, when we did his read along. He said that the Tiffany's ad on page 3 of the New York Times has been there since 1917. Just hard to imagine. And that's the time of the pandemic.
My mother was a very loyal Times reader. She passed away in 2015 at the age of 102. And the first thing she did when she read the paper was she opened it to page 3 to see what was in the Tiffany's ad. So, yeah.
How great is that? Sandra says 1978, tofu showed up in the pages of the New York Times that late. And Pradnya says the Al Franken stuff was a hastily ill-conceived reaction to Me Too, including, by the way, some of the female candidates running for president had to show that they were strongly coming out against Al Franken, and they did do just that. Our dear friend Steve Rosenbaum is watching. Leah Chang, amazing photographer. She's taken many of my headshots. And so those of you who've ever admired a headshot of mine or said anything nice about it, it's not me, it's Leah Chang who's taken most of them. And Linda says, my extended family plays Jenga games, lots of close contact. For now, our tournaments are postponed. So they're just talking about that. And in the use of saying amen is a concern that saying it will spread saliva, according to the article. How interesting.
Yeah.
And here's plant-based. Oh, so isn't that interesting? We go from tofu to this ad for another brand called Light Life plant-based burger. So that's different from Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger, which are the two brands I know. So maybe 25 years from now, they'll be saying, oh, this is so common in America. And look, and there's an ad in the New York Times about it, which is, shows you how things change. Amid dozens of deaths, London bus drivers are at quite frightening risk. And that's also part of the transit story. More than 80 transit workers in New York have died. And so we're thinking of them and all frontline essential workers. Muslims face agonizing shortage, a proper resting place for victims. Burial plots oriented toward Mecca are difficult to come by. And this is in France. That's the story out of France. You have, of course, a large Muslim population in Michigan,
oh, yeah,
and an Arab population that's both Christian and Muslim, right, in the greater Detroit area.
Well, and it's Ramadan, and so one of the things people might not realize about this part of the country is our sun sets about an hour later than New York City. So you have a very long day here to get through from breakfast until it's iftar, right? Is that the meal that you eat?
Yes, that's the word. Yeah, you break your fast with the iftar. So yeah,
you have iftar at like 9 o'clock at night here, and then you have about 9 hours overnight. Sun comes up around 6. So one of the pleasures that I've always had with good friends here is to go to Dearborn to some of our favorite restaurants and bakeries and to be around families when they break the fast, and we share dates with them and enjoy seeing big, 17, 18, 19, 20 people all gathered around big platters of food coming out. And we can't dine, we can get carry out, And in fact, a couple of the restaurants are giving a 25% discount to frontline workers, which I think is very sweet. But, you know, that tradition that we have of going for dinner and then there's a wonderful pastry place called Shatila that everybody in Detroit goes to. I mean, if you ever want to interview anyone who's visiting Detroit, if you ever want to interview every kind of person that lives in the Detroit area, go to Shatila on a Friday night or a Saturday night. Unfortunately, they're not open, but we can get carryout, and they have a very active mail order. But, you know, I feel that very deeply, that this is a tradition I have, even though I was raised as a Catholic. I like to be around my neighbors, and we have a mosque about 1.5 miles from my house, the mosque in Ann Arbor, and it's very open to the community. And there's Wednesday night classes about Islam, and we're invited to anything that they have. They invite all the neighbors. And so I feel, you know, just as I feel for Bollywood right now, I also feel for my my Muslim friends here in Ann Arbor, because it's like a half of a Ramadan. They can't really, they can pray, they can observe, but you can't have the family celebrations that people are used to having.
I totally understand that. And it's so great to see how global your interests are, Micki. And thank you so much for that. I wanted to show you one of the reasons we do the New York Times read along in this format is because we are able to annotate, thanks to our wonderful producers. If you connect with me on Facebook, please follow me there on Facebook. You'll see, here's Paula, one of our producers, just dropping links to the stories we're talking about. So there's a read editorial, there's an article about the London bus driver, so you can read all of this later. So basically, this is an annotated New York Times every Sunday, 8:30 to 10 a.m. So please do that. Please sign up and follow on my Facebook. You just find me, Sri Srinivasan, on Facebook. And Sujana Chandrasekhar, Dr. Sujana says, my mother-in-law was just remarking on that ad about meatless meats. And Stefan says, I love plant-based burgers, but I'll never do plant-based pizza, Neil, because Neil loves pizza. And Jersey pizza date after all this is over, asked Pradnya. No, never. New York pizza all the way, says Neil. And here's an explanation of what Shatila is in the town of in Greater Detroit, as you see there. Middle Eastern food in Detroit. This is the family we're building here, folks, this community. Please join. And Tanya says, truly amazing team. And folks, you can hire us to create your own show, as some people are doing. If you'd like your own talk show, here's your chance to work with us, or virtualize your event. We worked with dozens of organizations to put their events online, including a 3-day conference for Princeton that ended yesterday, and we've got lots of things cooking up. So please email me, sri@sri.net. If you want anything digital to come out of this that you want help with, we can help you. So please do connect with us. And we have something special cooking up for Mother's Day next Sunday, and Neil's here to tell us all about it.
Thank you, Sri. I appreciate that. Micki, thank you again for joining us. This has been a great conversation. We're certainly not done yet, but we do want to share our plans for Mother's Day, and maybe it's something you might be interested in. We were thinking about what can we do that would be special for Mother's Day, that would be different, and that would also be show the generosity of our community. So our plans for next week. Ready for the big reveal? We're going to do a Mother's Day edition next week, May 10th, 2020. On the screen, you see a picture. Sri, I'm hoping that's you and your mom. It might be some other little boy from a few years ago. And Mom, if you're still watching, that's obviously you with your grandchildren, Sanjay and Emily. So we want to thank moms on Mother's Day, but it's not just your mom. It might be the mother of your kids. It might be a mother figure in your life. However that works for you. But this is how we want to approach it. We want to encourage people to do a sponsorship on Mother's Day with 50% of the proceeds to go to charity. We will read a message on the air and show a picture. And if we do that for $100, we'll show just that one picture. Or if you want, we can include a picture in a collage We can also just scroll a thank you across the screen, as you see in the tickers across the bottom. If you go to this link, digimentors.link/mothers, you'll see a form to fill out your information. Let us know if you'd like to participate. The really cool thing about this opportunity is that we're actually doing this in conjunction with Shree's daily COVID show, the Sunday Positivity Edition. So on next Sunday, on Mother's Day, you'll actually get your ad placed, your sponsorship in both shows for the same price. 2 for 1 is what we're offering. And like I said, 50% will go to charity. On the form that we've set up, we're asking you to nominate a charity that we should pick for this promotion. So please go to digimentors.link/mothers, and we'll have our producers share those links in all of the groups and pages where people are watching. And hopefully we'll have some folks interested. And a quick early shout out to the mothers in our life. Of course, these are pictures of our moms. We also need to recognize Rupa and Pam for all the great work that they do. So thank you to everyone.
Yeah, and before if you can keep that up there, I want people to either take a screenshot. You go to the next page, let them get a screenshot of this so they can take this, or take your phone and take a picture so that you know how to find this information. Or please email me, sree@sree.net, SREE@sree.net if you didn't catch this, or message us and we will come to you and we'll show you how to do this. We are doing this in order to raise awareness of Mother's Day, but also to salute our mothers, and 50% of the proceeds will go to charity. We cannot promise that the charity you nominate is where the money will go, but we want to take nominations and we will tell you where that money is going next week. So please send us a nice photo, and also tell us, or type in the message you want us to read. And remember, even if you can't get this all together today, just let us know and we'll book a spot for you, because we have limited number of these spots. So please do let us know if you're interested. Message us. Just writing in the group is not necessarily enough, though some of that may get captured by our producers, but just let us know. Thank a mom on Mother's Day. Thank you very much, Neil. And let's continue here.
And I'll just show real quickly, Shree, the form online. We want to just show people that you can upload the picture right on the form. So just fill out this form. We have limited spots available for each of those options because we want to make sure that we give everyone that opportunity. So please fill out the form and upload the picture, and then we will thank mothers next week.
Yeah. So we love everybody to be involved with that. And I want to show this unusual ad in the New York Times. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. Support local journalism. News organizations need your help so they can continue to help you. And during this difficult time, staying informed is more important than ever. Yet many publications we rely on to keep us up to date are struggling and need your support. And on World Press Freedom Day, that's today and every day, we encourage you to find a local news organization you trust and support it. Look at this, the nytimes.com/support local journalism. Micki, this is very surprising and pleasantly surprising to me. I'm so pleased to see this, because one of the things we hear again and again, Micki, is that the New York Times is going to survive, the Wall Street Journal is going to survive, Washington Post is going to survive, LA Times is going to survive, but hundreds of publications are dying in front of our eyes. And this is a chance for you to step up and do this. Did you know anything about this? Have you seen this before?
It kind of went in the back of my head as I was getting ready to prepare for today. I want to just make a couple comments. First of all, it doesn't have to, there is an issue with some local journalism in this country because major chains have taken over and publications are not necessarily being produced in the city where they're based. And a lot of people are looking at their local papers and saying, why am I spending money for this? I'm not getting up to the minute local news. Well, the individual local newspapers are not your only choice. There's 1,000 NPR stations, and I have to give a plug for NPR because after I left the New York Times, I went to work on a couple of NPR projects and shows. The NPR stations here in Michigan are doing a fantastic job of covering COVID-19. WDET in Detroit is doing a fantastic job. WEMU FM in Ypsilanti, which is right next to Ann Arbor. And yes, my sister-in-law works there, but they have essentially turned over their newscast to COVID news, even though everybody's working from home. Michigan Radio is an excellent station. You may have heard their coverage of the Larry Nassar situation or the Flint water crisis. They're doing a wonderful job on COVID. I'm sure wherever you live, there's an NPR station that can use your support. And then there are also all kinds of local publications, magazines, newsletters, digital that can use your help as well. Support something news related, whether it is your local paper, whether it's an NPR station, whether it's a local publication. So for example, I do restaurant reviews and other restaurant stories for the Ann Arbor Observer here in Ann Arbor, which is a monthly that was started years ago, but really became necessary when the Ann Arbor News went from 7 days a week down to 2 days a week. And there was a GoFundMe this last month for the Ann Arbor Observer because it wasn't clear that they would be able to publish, because one of the things that they rely on is event listings and ticket sales and advertising. But the readers were so generous that they raised enough money to publish the May issue and to cancel the GoFundMe. So people are stepping up to support local journalism, and I hope wherever you are that you'll at least throw $10 at somebody. If you can afford that, throw $100 and really be useful. I just sent $100 down to WWNO in New Orleans, where I spend a lot of time, because they've been airing Jazz Festing in Place. Now, Jazz Fest can't take place this year because of shutdown. But what they've done the last 2 weekends at WWNO is they've pulled classic shows from Jazz Fest, and they've been airing them during the times when they would be airing Jazz Fest programming. The program is called Jazz Festing in Place. And I was so tickled that they would do that, because music means so much to people. And there is another station the station I meant was WWOZ. Sorry, guys. WWNO is the news station in New Orleans, and they've also could probably use your support. WWOZ is the music station. WWNO is the news station.
Thank you, Micki, for all that you're sharing and all these connections. Love that mug. And I'm glad you're sharing with us, Auntie.
If you're lucky enough to get up at 5 in the morning and you're in Washington, D.C. and Morning Edition invites you over, you get a mug. So I'm keeping this mug as long as I'm alive, I think.
I remember I was on Morning Edition. You got the same thing if you were on Morning Edition with Bob Edwards. The great Bob Edwards. You got a mug like that. And so I'll never forget it. Folks, this is one of the things that people around the world who are watching us cannot understand about America. Anti-vaccination drive discovers a platform at rallies and capitals. Even if we find a vaccine, Dr. Fauci says January, maybe. That's very optimistic. But if we do, we need a big percentage of the country to be vaccinated. But there will be millions of Americans who, because of everyone from the president on down, who have raised, even, I hate to say it, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who have raised questions, Jenny McCarthy, who have raised questions over vaccines over the decades. Now, this is all going to come home to roost. And if everybody doesn't get the vaccine, we are in danger. And this is what we're seeing. No other country in the world is this happening. And this is why we have to be careful, why information matters. One of the things that I've been saying, Micki, this is not a political statement, but when the president said, if you remember as a candidate, Trump, that I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose a single voter, if you remember that in his base, it turned out he wasn't talking about shooting one person on Fifth Avenue. He was talking about shooting thousands of people because of the way he approaches news, information, science, medicine. So now he's talking about the importance of vaccine, and he says, you won't believe how great the vaccine is going to be. But he already told people that vaccines are bad. Right. And therefore, that's going to affect how this goes forward. He's now in charge, he said yesterday, of the vaccine program. So think about that.
So I want to just say one thing about vaccines, because this is an issue that I've been interested in my whole life. People might know that we recently had the anniversary of the announcement. I think it was the 65th anniversary of the announcement of the polio vaccine. It was announced here in Ann Arbor because Dr. Salk had done some of his research work here in Ann Arbor before he went to Pittsburgh. So I wasn't alive at the time, but kids at Stone School, which was a one-room schoolhouse that still stands in Ann Arbor. It's used for a different purpose now, but they were the first in the country to get the polio vaccine. And parents in Ann Arbor deluged the polio team with requests for their children to be among the first. I think there are 500 vaccines available to get the polio vaccine. And so I grew up getting all my shots, getting all my vaccines. As I said earlier, I'm a dedicated flu shot person. We really have to remember that it's not just you getting one shot. It's not just your child getting one shot. It's building up what they call herd immunity. And since there is no vaccine for COVID-19, we can't build up herd immunity. This thing is vicious and it can kill you. So you do not want to take a risk. So when the vaccine is ready and safe, because that's a very important point, I hope people will get it. And if it's proven safe, I certainly will get it.
Thank you, Micki. To protect yourself, you don't cover your eyes. And this is about World Press Freedom Day from UNESCO. What a nice ad. And so, by the way, we're only on page 19 of 1,000 pages, and we have 15 minutes left. So we're going to try and speed this up just a little bit. And we hope our doctor who's standing by and will be joining us will be patient with us, because there's so much to cover, and Micki is so amazing. We need to do a part 2 with you in the months ahead. And here, ex-CEO is charged in listeria cover-up. This is from Bluebell Products. Oh my God, I love Bluebell ice cream. So what is this? Conspiracy in 2015. My God, I know I've had Bluebell ice cream in 2015. So some kind of cover-up in 2015. This is, I'm going to ask you a question, Micki. You covered, obviously, the media and business, particularly, for so long, and you've covered it. What is how do we as consumers understand that businesses aren't always going to do the right thing? And that's an example of it. Or even nonprofit institutions can be driven by other motives. And just talk about that a little bit. I want to hear kind of your philosophy on that.
Well, I wrote a book that came out in 2003 called The End of Detroit. And it was how the big three had lost their grip on the American car market. And, as we saw a couple of years later, and as I predicted in the book, General Motors and Chrysler were forced into bankruptcy, and Ford had to mortgage essentially everything it had in order to get the loans to stay in business. The reason for that went back decades. It was not it was not Japanese competition only. It was not that people had turned away from driving cars. It was that Detroit cars were awful. My parents drove Detroit Iron, of course. My dad loved the Chevrolet Impala. My mother was a dedicated Oldsmobile user. But then my brother was first person in our family to buy a Toyota, and then I bought a Toyota, and my father had passed away at that point, but my mother could see that the quality of our cars was better than what she was driving. And so the boomers and the Gen Xers were kind of the first people to say, I am not going to put up with cars where the doors fall off. I'm not going to put up with cars that might rust out. I am not going to put up with the dealerships that, have my car in for 6 months and won't help me. I'm going to buy a quality product. And so I think consumers play a huge role in, I guess you could say, outing unscrupulous companies, outing problems with products. We have consumer reports, but we also have word of mouth, and we also have now social media, and we have sharing on Facebook and just plain old emails between friends about products. And so I think one of the things we'll find out in this era, this COVID and the program, is it PPP that people, so the payment protection program, that there were so many major brands that got money that was meant for small business. And there's been amazing journalism around this, basically reporting a number of famous names that took money when small restaurants and salons and others were not able to tap into it. And so as consumers, as people who are not journalists, what you can do is read and listen and do research about brands. And, a lot of us use the same brands our parents did simply because it was what was in the house. I mean, I have Reynolds aluminum because my mother used Reynolds wrap, but you have to read up on the companies, you have to read up on their business practices and use your common sense. I think Americans are very smart people, and Americans can tell when something doesn't pass the smell test. But I do think that because journalism has been damaged in so many ways, we have seen so many people, I think it's 30,000 people who've either taken pay cuts or lost their jobs in the COVID era. Consumers have to be mini journalists, and we will help you in any way we can, but you also, it's up to you to participate as well.
All right, so thank you. You're absolutely right. So I'm just going to very quickly show a few things and then go to a couple of these, and then we got to wrap up our wonderful visit with Micki Maynard. So here, Berkshire Hathaway and the great Warren Buffett lost $50 billion this quarter, which was last year he made $50 billion the same quarter. So that tells you something. A giant of Italian art has died, and a giant of Motown has died. But look at this. One of the most important things you can have at home is an oximeter, a modern pulse oximeter. And the man who built it has died. And this is useful. It tells you what is happening with oxygen and temperature in your blood before you need it. So much better than a thermometer, but you should all salute this man who passed away, Takuo Aoyagi, who has passed away. By the way, was born in Japan, but you can see I'm not good at reading names cold like that. Look at the sports section of the New York Times, usually 8 to 16 pages on a Sunday, and just reduced to 2 pages there. It tells you how things have changed. Billions. Trust no one is that article. Want to show you we still have the Sunday Review, the road to immunity. How did we get there, and how long will it take? And we can also look at, we already saw the Sunday business section. There's also at home, which is we're all inside and in this together. And this is an important section. They have taken travel out, and they've taken out, what was the other section they removed, Micki?
They were supposed to, I think sports was supposed to go, but there's still sports in this Sunday.
No, even travel. There's travel pages, but no more travel section.
No more separate sections.
So there was, I think, something else. And then I love this. Everybody should get this and save it, because there are things to do during the week, including 5 dishes to cook this week. I'm going to save that to see what we can do here. And this is also mentions that the biggest star on TikTok is, or the most followed account on TikTok is a dancer in Norwalk, Connecticut, has 50 million followers on TikTok. How to make your own printer's hat, which is very cute. So these are all things to do with your kids. And I need this. See colleges without a road trip for people whose children like mine, whose SATs got canceled. They're in 11th grade, so they have 1 more year of high school. We have the Sunday Style section. Let's see if people are still getting married, as they are. You can see here that they look at this, how to live stream your wedding. So cute, so sad, all at the same time. And look at this. These are things we thought we would never see in the New York Times, and we are seeing that. And also, things that changed over time, right, Micki? Single-sex couples, people of color. The New York Times 100 years ago, when they were doing the society pages, did not have things like that.
Well, and a shout out to Anderson Cooper, who announced this week that he's now a father through surrogate. And I just wish, his mother was one of my favorite writers, Gloria Vanderbilt, fabulous personality. There's a wonderful book and a documentary that the two of them produced together. And he said, growing up as a gay kid, I never thought I'd be able to have a baby. And now he's a father. And it's just, I mean, how wonderful to have good news.
in the middle of all of this too, right? Like that's amazing. By the way, this is In Search of Doris Duke in the book section, the philanthropist Doris Duke. I got to spend, you can see her home, Shangri-La Estate in Hawaii. And they have an amazing Islamic art collection there. And I and my family got to go out and I spent a week as a technologist in residence there.
Oh, wonderful.
It was a hard gig to go to Hawaii for a week and get paid for it. But everybody, when you're traveling to Hawaii, when we get to travel again, you must check out the Shangri-La Museum. It's the Museum of Islamic Art, Culture, and Design. I love looking at the bestseller list just for ideas. And I want to hear if you've read any of these. You can just jump in when you have. Number one in fiction is Masked Prey by John Sanford. Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, who I've interviewed. She is amazing. Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. American Dirt by Janine Cummings. So it shows you that books don't have to be canceled in order to have a real examination, and it still did well. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I don't know those books. Okay, Untamed by Glennon Doyle, the activist and public speaker, describes her journey of listening to her inner voice. The Splendid and the Vile by Eric Larson.
Oh, that's a great book. I'm a huge Eric Larson fan.
Yeah, he's a Columbia alum, Columbia Journalism School alum, and we love him. The House of Kennedy by James Patterson. Hidden Valley Road by Robert Kolker. And Educated by Tara Westover.
That's a terrific
and
book, too.
Front Row at the Trump Show. I like that, by Jonathan Karl, who's now president of the White House Correspondents Association, and Trump keeps yelling at him on press conferences, and really kind of in real time that's happening. And How COVID-19 has revealed the deadly realities of a polarized America. And this is a big, big story. The Times Magazine, always wonderful, doing really important work. And we're seeing that right now here as well. Neil, I think you have queued up the behind the cover. We won't watch the whole thing, but maybe we can just see a little bit of it if you have time. Otherwise, we can just continue to just go through this here. How to get your balance. Oh, here it is. So he's going to play this part of that.
From the New York Times Magazine, this is Behind the Cover.
Our cover story this week is by Linda Villarosa, and it's about how COVID-19 has revealed the deadly realities of the racially polarized country that we live in. Linda located her reporting in the city of New Orleans, where the virus has hit especially hard.
Our photo department sent El Kasimu Harris to document the illness's effects on one of the city's social clubs, many of whose members fell ill after Mardi Gras.
In early April, Louisiana became one of the first states to release COVID-19 data by race. It showed that although African Americans comprise 33% of the state's population, they make up 70% of those who have died in Louisiana from COVID-19.
We wanted to make a comment that felt like it was telling that larger story on the cover. I started by making a number of different covers with statements that people were making about the virus early on, and then just striking through those statements to make it clear that those things were not the case.
As you were working through this design, it just got more and more and more simply represented.
Yeah, there was a shift to asking the most basic question possible, the one that really is at the heart of this.
It was no longer enough for us to simply rebut the idea that this virus is the great equalizer. That has been made abundantly clear. So we wanted to make sure that the cover took a step further than that.
As debates continue about when our economy should open, it's important to understand who those kinds of decisions really end up affecting.
Wow, very, very nicely done. As you know, they do a great job. Folks, just look inside here in the New York Times Magazine. President Trump will be very unhappy because this is Brad Pascal, his campaign manager, and the reports that he yelled at him just this week because he's unhappy with the ways in which his polling numbers have gone down, and so he blamed Brad Pascal, and now he's on the cover. He's the star of this article. And then on the blue side here, how do you run for president from your basement? And so talking to Joe Biden's new campaign manager, Jennifer O'Malley Dillon. So she's the Robbie Mock of this campaign.
She's
and so
a
it'll be interesting to see.
Person, I think she'll probably get, I mean, there hasn't been any point really in pushing the campaign during COVID, but I think as she becomes more visible as we shift over to campaigning, I think people will be really interested in her background.
Yeah, and I would say to anybody who thinks that the president's slide in the polls means he's going to lose in November and that Joe Biden's going to win. I can promise you that there's nobody can say that for sure. And we have seen, if you had told me that a president would have an October surprise, a candidate would have an October surprise of a video coming out 3 weeks early where he says, I grabbed women's genitals, and he would be elected, you would be laughed off. And that's what happened. So do not presume Americans will follow what is the right thing or what is the obvious thing in any way. I've been wrong about President Trump, President Trump, since the day he came down the escalator. And this is, and now here we are. Here's a puzzle section, and I know that I want Neil to come in here to tell us something about the puzzle section, an entire section of puzzles, but that's not really why I want him to come on screen to talk about this.
Shri, the answer for across 3 is actually Shri Srinivasan this week. It's really, no, that's not why you were bringing me on. No, what's really interesting is that this is Puzzle Mania. This is a special puzzle section that usually comes out later in the year. I think it only comes out once a year, in fact. But according to Jake Silverstein at the magazine, they asked Will Shortz to put together a special section early because everyone's at home. Everyone needs something more to do. You see people exchanging jigsaw puzzles with each other, right? Just to have something else to do. So Will Shortz and brought his team together to put out this special Puzzle Mania edition that Shri just flipped through. And I should have focused on that so we could take a look at that. But check out that cover. And Shri, if you can just take another look inside, 48 puzzles, all sorts of different engagements. That centerfold, I think, is great, just with the crossword. The other thing that we'd like to share, I guess, we are in conversations with Will Shortz to bring him to the New York Times read-along. We're just trying to figure out the date, and fingers crossed we'll be able to make it work. We were hoping to go up to his table tennis center up in Pleasantville one weekend this summer. I was going to come up from DC. Of course, that won't happen. But we will plan to have him on the air as soon as we can work out the logistics. So that's a great teaser for the future.
Yeah, and that's what we call a great get. And folks, we're looking for speaker ideas. So if you have an idea for a guest, please nominate them. Email me, sri@sri.net or neil@neilparekh.org, and let's get more ideas. We do this every single Sunday for 5 years. We've been doing this show, and we want your ideas. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube every Sunday. Please become a subscriber of my SriNet YouTube page so you can go back and look at all the great stories we have on there for you. So please do check that out. Let's see what else is in the paper, the Metropolitan section. And look at this, the new Saturday night. Portraits from around the world show billions of people in lockdown are improvising the rituals for that most mythic of evenings. And they're right, Saturday night is the one night that is a holiday in most places in the world, or all places in the world. And my daughter, by the way, is just coming back in from walking our dog. So I'm going to ask Micki, and we have to do this whole desanitizing or sanitizing process. So Micki, I'm going to ask you to give us some final thoughts, give us some inspiration, give us some hope, and then I'm going to help my daughter, and then I'm going to come back. But go ahead, Micki.
Oh, so I have a evening ritual. I don't know if people remember Robin Lustig, who was, hello doggy. Robin Lustig was anchor on BBC World News for years and years and years. He's a very familiar voice to public radio listeners from BBC broadcasts. So I discovered this a couple of weeks ago. He's reading The Secret Garden chapter by chapter as a podcast. So if you were to go into Apple Podcasts or another podcast app and just do search for Robin Lustig, Lustig, or follow him on Twitter, you will get a chapter by chapter reading. I think he does it every other day, of The Secret Garden, which was my favorite book when I was a child. And you can also find the book for free online. And so we're up to the point in the book where Mary and Dickon take Colin to the secret garden. So if people remember the book, they'll know what I mean. But, you know, it's been really wonderful. That's the last thing I listen to every night is I put on Robin Lustig's podcast, and I'm sort of transported to the moors of Yorkshire and to a book that I loved as a child, and into gardens, because we are starting to see gardens here in Ann Arbor come into bloom. But it just gets me completely away from the news and completely away from worrying, you know, am I going to get sick? Is my aunt going to get sick? How many more people are we going to lose? And I think whether it's that podcast or whether it's something else, a cooking podcast, the food program from the BBC, Lisa Birnbach has a wonderful podcast called 5 Things with Lisa Birnbach. She was one of the co-authors of the Preppy Handbook years ago and a co-author of Food Prep. And Lisa's very generous to authors. So if you even just go back through her archive and listen to her last year of podcasts, that's just a nice, relaxing way to get away from the cares that we're experiencing right now.
Thank you so much, Micki. And where can we track you? Where can we watch you? Where can we read you?
So obviously on Twitter, I'm at Micki, M-I-C-K-I, Maynard, M-A-Y-N-A-R-D. I would invite people to subscribe to the Curbing Cars newsletter, which you can find if you go to our website, www.curbingcars.com. You can sign up there. We have a brand new podcast that you'll find. It's just called the Curbing Cars podcast. And just one note about Curbing Cars. As I explain in the teaser for the podcast, we are not anti-car. We are essentially looking at the future of transportation and its intersection with the environment. And so don't get on there thinking, I want to ban cars. It's definitely not where we are. We're more looking at, you know, biking, walking. I'm about to do a story on little robots that are delivering groceries. Essentially where big cars and trucks leave off is where we pick up. And also we're looking at climate change. And it's been a fascinating period for that, because as people don't drive, we're seeing clear skies even over India and clear waters in Venice. And it's been fascinating for the environment as well.
It really has. And I salute you on your work around the future of mobility and transportation. I think we all need to think about that. Gives me a chance to plug my other show, which is our daily COVID-19 call. We had Robin Chase on. Robin, as you know, is the co-founder of Zipcar, and she has been talking about all these streets of Manhattan that are empty. Let's make places for people to walk with enough social distancing. And there's been, she wrote an op-ed in the Boston Globe, and she came on our show to talk about that. And that show is just an example of the great conversations we have. So please, please, please go to YouTube and follow StreamYard. Subscribe there so that you can see all our great. We've done 52 days straight of news shows and conversations, and we're now also on scroll.in, which is one of India's most important news, analysis, and culture websites. And by the way, if you can listen right now, that's the soundtrack of New York. It's always been, sirens have always been part of the soundtrack, but now it's especially sad because there's so many of these right now, and there's ambulance after ambulance. I'm going to show you right now. Look there, an ambulance right now. What used to be mostly police cars and fire engines, now so many ambulances, and it's so tragic. That's the world we're living in now. Look how empty this is on a beautiful Sunday at 10 a.m. We'd have hundreds of people walking in this direction to Central Park right over there in the distance. You see that Central Park, 96th Street. There is an entrance to the highway, and so there are cars, but no people in Manhattan. This is so, so sad, Micki, and you know all of these places really well.
Yeah, it's been heartbreaking. I mean, I'm praying for everyone in New York and everyone around the country and the world, really. I mean, this has been a universal experience that I've never had. I mean, a little bit of 9/11 was like this, but this is truly a way to sort of just, I guess we can't reach out our hands to each other, but we can wish each other namaste, and we can, do our best to stay healthy.
No, thank you. And there's so many great comments, Micki. I hope you'll get a chance to go into your own page and look at the comments, but also go to my page and look at the comments. People love you, Micki, and they've learned so much from you.
Thank you for this wonderful experience. I really appreciate it very, very much. And I'm
going to make sure we connect over Bollywood stuff, because I didn't know about your love for Bollywood.
Absolutely.
And very, very delighted to hear that. So we're going to say goodbye to Micki Maynard now and just say thank you for your time. And I hope you will send along speaker suggestions among your friends who are writers, anybody interesting. We will take. We had a Michigan connection just 2 weeks ago where Judge Rosemary Aquilina was with us, and you know that she presided over the 2018 USA Gymnastics sex abuse scandal and did such great work as the judge putting away Larry Nassar. And we also had Harlan Coben come and join us, the writer and Netflix producer. He has 3 shows on Netflix on at the same time. We've had so many interesting guests, and you are right in there, Micki, with that alumni of the New York Times Read Along. Thank you so much. And everyone, please email me if you have feedback or suggestions. But the show is not over. We're going to say goodbye to Micki. And then we have our medical segment, where we have brought a wonderful doctor to talk to you and answer your questions. So this is our rapid fire questions segment. And there is Dr. Zara Patel, MD, is joining us. Zara, thank you. I want you to say hi to Micki. You've been listening. So Zara, any comments you want to say to her? We'll start with that first.
Well, I really enjoyed listening to you guys so far on the show. And, so many of the things you talked about really hit home with me as well. I'm so glad, Micki, that you talked about vaccination, because that's such an important thing that we're going to have to be dealing with as this pandemic hopefully crests, and then it can only subside with people understanding how important vaccination is. And then seeing those streets in New York that you were just showing. I did my residency, actually, my surgical residency in New York at Mount Sinai, and it is just surreal to see the streets so empty on a Sunday morning. It was such a wonderful time in my life to be in New York during residency, and it breaks my heart to see what is going on in New York right now.
Tell us where you're watching from right now.
So I'm at Stanford University. I'm in California, Northern California, and I'm at my home in Woodside. I'm coming to you from there. And, we've been so lucky here in California that, the shelter in place went in probably one of the earliest in the country that happened. And we've really been able to flatten the curve, and we have not seen the surge and the same devastation that places like New York have seen because of that. So we've been very lucky here.
Thank you. So let's let Micki go. Thank you very much, Micki. And Zara, before we start, we want to just give people a moment to send us questions in our various channels. And I also want Neil to come on and thank our sponsors and also tell us about our Mother's Day promotion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shri. And thank you, Zara, for joining us. As a reminder, please post your questions. Shri will be checking his Facebook page on his phone so that we can grab those. But I want to take a moment and just thank our sponsors again and make sure that you know some of the great support that we've gotten from our sponsors. For this week, want to thank Strategy Focus Group and Muckrack for the work that they do. Strategy Focus Group is a global team of human capital strategists committed to helping organizations solve people issues within your organization. They do that by working alongside you to solve your toughest problems and helping you capture your greatest opportunities. Muckrack helps you discover news as it breaks, easily generate reports, and explore the work of journalists, podcasters, bloggers, and more. Muckrack's software helps PR teams build stronger relationships with the media. And if you're a journalist, you might also be eligible for their free tools to identify trends and showcase your work. We want to thank Ron Thomas of Strategy Focused Group, Greg Gallant and Mike Schneider from Muckrack, and for all of their support. And for if you are interested in being a sponsor, just know, please email me, neil@neilparekh.org. But just know that we have various levels of sponsorship and various time commitments. So if you want to have a short-term sponsorship, 4 weeks, for example, or if you want to have a longer engagement, we can accommodate you. The other thing that we wanted to tell folks about, in case they're joining us late, is our special Mother's Day promotion that we're doing next week. If you go to digimentors.link/mothers, you'll see an opportunity to thank your mom or the mother of your kids or a mother figure in your life. Here you see pictures of Shree's mom with Shree, and my mom with her grandchildren, my daughter and my nephew Sanjay. We are encouraging people, if they're interested in giving their moms a shout out, we can read a message on the air and show a picture. For example, I'd show a picture of my mom and say Happy Mother's Day to Sudha Parekh from Neil Parekh and the rest of the family. If you wanted to just include their picture in a collage, we could do that too, and we'd have up to like 15 different pictures, and just say Happy Mother's Day to Lekha Srinivasan and Sudha Parekh, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and show it on one screen. We also have the opportunity to scroll a thank you across the screen during the show. And so all the details, I'll give you an example right now in real time. And I'm taking the opportunity to thank my mom again. So this is what the banner would look like. It'd say Happy Mother's Day, Sudha Tolia Parekh, and we'd let that scroll across the screen during the show. So please go to digimentors.link/mothers. And the important thing to note, if you look at the top two important things, one, the 50% of the proceeds will go to charity. So in the form that you fill out to send us your information, you can nominate a charity that it would go to. We'll choose which one. It may not be the charity you choose, but we're looking for ideas. And the other thing to note is that this is a joint opportunity with the daily COVID calls that Shree does, Sunday night, the Positivity Edition. We will show your ad twice, in the morning and in the evening, for the same price, a 2-for-1 special. So I think it's a great opportunity for Mother's Day, and we hope you will join us in thanking not just your mom, not just the mother of your kids. Shree, you need to thank Rupa. I need to thank Pam continuously for letting us do this show. But we also want to thank the mother figures in our lives, because we know that there's always, everyone has a different situation. There may be someone that you're particularly close to. So please consider that. Thank you.
And yeah, thank you. I'm so excited about this because I know people will want to do it, and we can also be a little creative. If somebody wants to give out if their mom has an Instagram account, we can get her a bunch of new followers from around the world. If you want to, even in the scroll, we can add, the name of the kids who are paying for it, because you may want to have a little rivalry with your relative, with your siblings, and give your mom or grandmom also a shout out. So there's all kinds of things we can do with this. We want to be creative. We're also learning how this media stuff works, how sponsorships work, but we're delighted to offer this. So that's next Sunday. And by the way, Mother's Day is not the same day every day all over the world, each time of the year. So this is the American Mother's Day, but you can be anywhere in the world and participate. Just send us the information. Even if you don't have your credit card and all that ready right now, reserve the spot by going to that form. Once again, I just want people to take a screenshot. Micki, in the middle of talking to us, she screenshotted it, and Neil put it on Twitter. So that was pretty amazing. Wow. So everyone take a screenshot of this and send this to your siblings and say, we can afford this. This is a great way to thank any mother in your life, mother figure, aunts, grandparents, and just any mother figure. We would love to do this for them. And in the future, we're also planning a similar thing for Father's Day, which is in June in the United States. So thank you very much, Neil. And
Shree, let's go right into questions for Dr. Patel.
I see a whole bunch of questions. So let me get started. Zara, why don't you first very quickly tell us your background, your specialization, and then we will go. And we should say to everyone that every doctor that we have on here, we're also looking for doctors to come every week. Last week we had a nurse, a registered nurse. Any medical professional is helpful to us at this time. So if you can suggest names, please email us. That's how Zara came to us. on a recommendation. And so we would love to have more of these folks joining us every Sunday as part of the read along. And go ahead, Zara.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Sri, for having me. I am an otolaryngologist. That means an ENT type of doctor. And I did my surgical residency in New York at Mount Sinai. And now I am at Stanford University. And I do endoscopic sinus and skull-based surgery. So that basically means, using cameras going through the nose, anything in this area, all the way to the, base of the skull. So that is my particular subspecialty. But certainly, all of the things related to COVID right now are actually quite present in the world of otolaryngology because of the high viral load in the nasal cavity and how it affects us as providers and how it affects patients.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so let's go to some questions. And by the way, are there ways for people to connect with you publicly? Do you have you want to tell us what are your platforms?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram at Zara Patel _MD. And I just joined Twitter this month just to put out some information about coronavirus and how it relates to our specialty. And so you can find me there. And also I have a public Facebook page, Zara Patel MD. So I'm happy for anyone to join any of those.
Thank you. And we're scrolling those across the screen right now. So let's go to questions. Carla Platter asks from Florida, if I'm driving with my windows down and I can smell another driver's cigarette smoke, is there potential for virus?
So I would say yes. Is there potential? Is it extremely likely that virus will get to you? Unlikely. The odor molecules that are in cigarette smoke that you're picking up on are wafting on the breeze and probably travel much further than any droplets or aerosol. Having said that, being in the slipstream behind a car or when people are outside running or biking definitely does allow for particles of aerosolized mucus to travel further. And so, if someone was smoking in that car in front of you, coughed out the open window, and that happened to go right, behind and into your car, is it possible that you could get viral particles and breathe them in that way? Yes, it's possible. I would say unlikely, but possible.
Okay, and then we have a question here. Is it okay to interact and hug someone that's had COVID-19, has been exposed to it after recovering?
So, the thing is, we don't really know what that means, that someone has had the virus, has antibodies. Hopefully, they know that from some testing. But when we say recovered, we don't know how long that we're still shedding virus after symptoms go away. And that probably has a lot to do with why and how this spread so rapidly around the globe, that people who were asymptomatic were likely traveling either before they got symptoms, after they had symptoms, or as you know, many people don't have any symptoms. And so you can't really tell when it is, quote unquote, safe if you have not been exposed to interact with someone, hug them, be very close to them again. The other thing is that even if you personally have had the virus, we don't actually know what that means for your long-term immunity. It means that you have antibodies right now, but perhaps in the future, depending on how long the antibodies stick around, what happens with this virus, whether it stays the same or whether it can change and mutate, whether or not you even can remain immune to it.
And that's one of the things that we can't say often enough, doctor, that we don't know all the answers. No one knows all the answers. No one knows even most of the questions. Exactly. Even the great Anthony Fauci doesn't have the answers. And so we've got to keep saying, we're not sure, we're not sure. And Carolina's question that I just asked, she says, one of my dear friend's kids had COVID, and I believe she's immune to it. However, her grandpa, my friend's dad, recently passed away due to COVID. I went to see them keeping distance, given how many in the family have had COVID.
Yeah, I think, the sad thing about there's many sad things, but one of the sad things is that, families who usually would have multiple generations being able to interact quite often, grandparents, grandchildren, and friends of the families all coming together, they really have to be careful because as you know, people who are younger are often not as symptomatic or not as susceptible to having complications. People who are older, if they're exposed, unfortunately, often can die from this type of disease. So, making sure that you stay as far away as you can. If you're going to be interacting and have to be within 6 feet or in the public at all, having a mask or face covering so that it can really help protect not only yourself, but others. Even if you think that, oh, I'm otherwise healthy, I'm going to be okay. Number one, that's not necessarily true. And number two, you really are wanting to protect other people when you're around people in the environment.
And this is one of the things I think that Americans just don't understand, that part of wearing a mask in, say, East Asian culture is not about that you're sick, or that you want to, you're not scared of other people. You're trying to make sure that you're not infecting other people. Like that cultural difference, I think, is affected part of the reason why we're in this terrible situation in the U.S. Yes, yeah.
And I think that particular to this country is our tight hold on our liberties and our freedoms, and we don't want anyone telling us what to do or taking away any of that freedom. And that is part of what makes America special and great. But it is times like these where you start to see how your own personal freedoms and liberties may impact others in ways that you may not have otherwise realized. And so it's really more about compassion, respect for other people, empathy, and just understanding that even though you are free to do whatever you want, your actions do impact other people. And just having that realization can help a lot of people, I think, understand what is the right thing to do.
And I think freedom of speech is an example where you have the absolute right to freedom of speech, but within reason. You cannot, in the most famous example of all, right, shout fire in a crowded theater just because you're allowed to say anything you want. Of course, you're allowed to say anything you want in certain circumstances, and that's important to keep in mind. And I just want to thank you, Doctor, for being with us and for sharing such clear, concise answers, because that's really important in terms of communication. And you're at Stanford University, home, among many other people, to Abraham Verghese and his incredible narrative medicine program. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet Dr. Verghese yet, but he is absolutely amazing. Sandra Yin says, why does the coronavirus manifest in so many different ways? For instance, some get respiratory symptoms while others do not. Then I'm hearing about strokes and other neurological symptoms, and people losing a sense of smell or taste, but nothing else. Is this unusual for a disease of this level to have, as she says, manifestation in such different ways?
Well, it's not actually unusual. One of my areas of research is actually in loss of smell, and I'm a smell expert, and so and so it was actually not surprising at all to me when these reports started coming out about people with COVID-19 presenting with loss of smell, because I know from my practice and my research that lots of different viruses actually have done this. We have post-viral olfactory loss. Smell loss is one of the most common reasons why people lose their sense of smell and taste. So hundreds of other coronaviruses, rhinoviruses, influenza viruses, there's lots of viruses that can cause this. Now, in particular, for the other questions about why this manifests in so many different ways, there are lots of different receptor sites for the virus in different parts of our body. And that is why it can manifest in all these different ways. So, high up in the nasal cavity, where the olfactory smell nerves sit, are receptors for this virus. Obviously, it affects the lungs. Obviously, it affects your whole body in different ways. The question of these blood clots and complications like that, unfortunately, many otherwise young, healthy people presenting with strokes in New York hospitals now in emergency rooms, that actually has to do with the inflammatory process that occurs in your body when you get a viral infection and you have a high level of inflammation. Anytime you get a high level of inflammation in your body, with your body mounting this very robust response, it can affect your clotting factors and the ability for your blood to stay thin and not create these clots. And when there is this diffuse coagulation, diffuse clotting of the blood, then you see problems in all of the organ systems of your body. And that is actually one of the ways in which we see people having a lot of difficulty in the ICUs, the intensive care units, and reasons why some otherwise young, healthy people are having heart attacks, they're having strokes, they're having organ failure because of these clotting mechanisms that occur with a very high inflammatory response in the body.
Thank you, folks. You're watching Dr. Zara Patel talking to me and taking questions from around the world. Please tag your friends right now so they can watch this either now or later. Please hit share. Please retweet. Even Micki Maynard is still watching, who just did an amazing hour and a half talking about the New York Times and her love of everything from Bollywood to the future of transportation. So please do share this. My father says, Micki, if you're still watching, he says, thank you from India. And that's so nice that you're still with us here. Please post your questions, and we hope Dr. Patel will go in and answer some that she doesn't get a chance to answer here. We only have a few minutes left with her, so let's go to a couple of questions. I will say about the sense of smell, I've become obsessed with this. We have a very smelly dog, and I've never been so grateful. Tara, who I showed a couple of minutes ago, first thing I do every morning, and as soon as I wake up, is she's in bed with us, and so I just smell. I go in here and just take in that entire wonderfully disgusting aroma, and that's the way I know I'm alive, or I'm going to stay alive at least for another day. And am I being paranoid, crazy? Tell me.
No, I mean, it's really not until people lose their sense of smell that they understand how important and impactful that sense is to their quality of life. And now people are understanding even more how it can really be a harbinger for many different disease processes. This COVID-19, it can be one of the earliest signs of having this, but loss of smell can also be one of the earliest signs of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. It can let us know that other things are going on with synaptic processes in the brain. People with depression tend to have not as an acute sense of smell. So there's so many different parts of smell and the way in which we relate to it and the way it allows other people to relate to us that impacts our quality of lives to such a great extent.
Thank you so much. Paula just posted a link to my dog's Instagram handle, the.tara. We have a question from Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar, who was in your slot here just a few weeks ago, and she says, should patients worry about going in for routine healthcare now? What precautions are doctors taking to protect them? She, of course, knows the answers to all of this. She wants you to, it's a prompt from her.
Yeah, so thank you, Sujana, for joining us and asking that, because I do think that, as we see societies slowly do a reopen, people will be wanting to come in for the medical care that they have been delaying over this past month to 2 months. And so if there is a serious health issue, certainly you should be able to start coming in to see your doctor, whether that's an in-person visit, or now many people have the ability to do telemedicine and video visits, which we're doing at Stanford. If it's something that you need to come in for, just take all the normal precautions that you would when you go into public. Cover your face, make sure that you are washing your hands, hand sanitizing. If it's a medical problem that is not that acute and you think it could still wait a while, that may be the best thing to do while shelter-in-place orders are still at hand, and perhaps maybe instead try to do a video visit with your physician if it's not something that they have to see you for. In our specialty in ENT, we are quite procedure heavy. We need to look inside your nose and inside your ear, and really in order to be able to see what's going on very well. And so for people like that who you really need to have an in-person exam, we are slowly reopening our clinics. Definitely here at Stanford and in many other parts of the country. We're doing it in a very careful and methodical way to protect the patients and to protect the providers. Many of your providers, your physicians that you see, will probably be wearing protective gear that you're not used to them wearing, maybe wearing face masks during particular parts of the exam that they didn't before. But as long as everyone is, on the same page and understanding that all of these precautions are being put into place to protect you and to protect us, I do think that we are going to be able to slowly return to a new normal at this point.
Thank you so much. Zara Patel is with us. We have just a couple of minutes with her. Tanya Mallet, who's with us, Tanya says that she has not had a sense of smell for decades. It helps with her dogs. But she has a different question. Can you speak about the impact of fear and stress on how people are affected? Could it be that fear and stress are creating a bigger problem here in New York than in other places? I live in Suffolk County, she says, population 1,200 deaths. Her parents are in San Francisco, about 1 million population, 29 deaths. So could it be that the stress is adding to the problem here?
Well, I think, in general, we know that when people have very high stress level, that does affect your immune functioning. And so in that sort of related way, it could certainly be affecting people's ability to naturally fight off a virus when you get it. But I will say there's other differences, major differences in New York versus San Francisco. And that is, like I mentioned at the beginning, our shelter-in-place order and the population's response to that order was very soon in the whole process of this pandemic, and the response was robust. We did a great job. The entire Bay Area did an excellent job of suddenly everyone shutting down, staying at home, staying out of public as much as possible, and that is actually the thing that is the biggest driver why San Francisco and the Northern Bay Area has such few deaths and fewer cases versus New York. Even when New York was trying to put into place shelter-in-place orders, there were lots of people that were still going about their daily activities, still going to brunch on Sundays, and it took a while for the school system to close down in New York because of concerns of what kids would do that didn't have any other place to go, didn't have other ways to get food during the day. And so there are a lot of different issues at play when New York was trying to shut down. And obviously the proximity of people in New York City is much greater. So many more buildings where the only way in or out is a 20-floor or 100-floor ride in the elevator with people that are in your apartment building. And so there are so many different things at play. But it is true that, fear and stress can affect your immune system and your immune function. And it is important to try and, put into practice on a daily basis ways in which you can decrease your levels of anxiety, which are totally normal to have in response. And the last thing I'll say about that is that we are likely to see during this pandemic a rise in mental health issues. People who already were suffering with mental health problems are going to be much more stressed in times like these. And even people who otherwise didn't have any sort of depression or anxiety, this forced social isolation we find ourselves in and this uncertainty in times like these can have such a huge impact in our mental health. And people should just remain aware of that's normal. That's not something to be ashamed about. It's something you should try to talk about with your family and your friends or anyone in your community, and certainly your doctor, and definitely, have that addressed and try not to ignore it.
Has been Dr. Zara Patel. Please follow her on Facebook, Zara Patel MD. On Twitter and Instagram, she's Zara Patel _MD. Let's show her how many people are watching and how much we are connected on social. Thank you so much, Doc. I hope you'll come back, and I hope you'll also be a guest on our daily program. Tonight, we have a fantastic session. We call it Positivity Night on Sunday, and we have the great John O'Leary joining us. He has millions of fans online, and you can follow him on all these different platforms. He has a new book coming out, In Awe. readinawe.com. Check that out. He is going to fill you with his life-inspired podcast and everything else that he does. And that's at 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight here in New York. And we also want to give a shout out to a couple of our friends who have new shows out, including our friend Stephen Kaplan has the Spin It Social Hour, and our friend Julia Weeks has the Navy Yard Neighbor podcast. That's also not podcast, this show. And if you would like to have your own talk show, maybe the doctor would, maybe other doctors would, or anybody would like either their own show or a virtualized event, please email me, sree@sree.net, SREE@SREE.net. We've been working with amazing institutions around the world, and this is your chance to have your own show or to virtualize an in-person show. Do not cancel your conference unless you absolutely have to. Call me and we will help you do that. We've done that for multiple organizations, and we've got great referrals and great references and testimonials already just in this 1 month period. So thank you, Doc. And we want to say namaste and wish you the very best out in Stanford Hospital. Good luck, and please stay safe.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And folks, what an amazing 2 hours and 5 minutes. We've been live. We're very grateful to everybody who's been watching, everyone who's supporting us by being here, by hitting share, by retweeting. Tag your friends right now, even though we're at the end of the show. Just tag a couple of friends in Facebook or on Twitter or wherever you're watching, and they can watch the rerun, which will start right now. Our show was with Micki Maynard, the former award-winning Detroit bureau chief of the New York Times, and we've been doing the show for 5 years. We're so grateful to everybody for being part of our New York Times read-along family. We're looking for guests all the time. As soon as this is over at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, I'm going to be on this in Instagram live conversation. The place to find it is on Museum Culture and Marketing. Museum Culture and Marketing. We're going to talk about what's now and what's next. I'm a guest on this show. That's unusual for me, but I love doing that. And let me say hello to everybody who will be able to join us there. So that's it for now. A couple of reminders. Please watch my daily COVID-19 show, including tonight's positivity show with the great John O'Leary tonight. Don't forget Mother's Day promotion. We're doing a Mother's Day celebration next Sunday, 8:30 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Please tag your friends, anybody who would like to salute a mom or mom figure in their lives. This is a chance to do it. We're going to show you the ad card so that you can see the ad rates. So inexpensive, a chance to do a shout out for moms. Maybe the mom in your life, the grandmother, the aunt, or just somebody who supports you. Give them a shout out. Very inexpensive. Half the proceeds will go to charity. And you can just email me if you can't remember this link, or message me if you can't find this link. But please take a screenshot. Use your phone to take a photograph. I'm just going to model good behavior and do that right now. And I'm taking a picture of that as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. We will see you again 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time every Sunday, and also 9 p.m. every Sunday Eastern Time for the COVID-19 show. Thank you so much to everyone, to Neil Parekh, to Julia Weeks, to Paula Kiger, our producers, and to everybody who watched around the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Goodbye, everybody.